Four men have a gunfight at a railroad station. It sounds like a standard opening to a typical Western, and on the surface, you'd be correct, because it's a fairly straightforward scene split into two parts: the arrival of the three men,
If you want any tickets, you'll have to go around
and the eventual confrontation.
Looks like we're shy of one horse.
But what makes this scene so unique amongst other Westerns, and even Leone's own films, is that between these two parts, there's nearly 12 minutes of screen time, in which only 3 lines of dialogue are spoken.
That'll be $7.
And in doing this, Leone perfectly set up the tone and, more importantly, the pacing of Once Upon a Time in the West, creating not only his most original Western film, but arguably his best.
Inside the dusters there were 3 men. Inside the men there were 3 bullets.
If you haven't seen the film, it centers around the Western expansion of the railroad, with one man attempting to buy up land thanks to the help of a hired gun named Frank,
People scare better when they're dying.
a woman fighting with an outlaw to keep possession of her late husband's land,
See Frank, and tell him I know everything.
and another man simply named Harmonica out to enact vengeance on Frank for his brother's death.
Which deal, Frank? We have more than one, you and me.
He often drifts into frame as though he's some supernatural figure, appearing behind pillars and through veiled curtains, or, in this scene, appearing behind a moving train at a station, the same location where the entirety of this 15-minute sequence takes place. And that was for good reason.
Hey, Mr. Choo-Choo.
While Once Upon a Time in the West is full of breathtaking landscapes and incredible shots like this, in order to create a claustrophobic atmosphere and play homage to other classic Westerns, he wanted the lengthy opening to take place in a single location.
That first sequence kind of summarizes a lot of American films, John Ford and Howard Hawks Westerns that we've seen before, in the way that that whole station was built. The bare wooden planks, the windmill squeaking across the way, everything about it.
And by utilizing this singular location, Leone was able to remove any distracting landscapes or additional characters, and given the reins to fully flex his skills as a director.
La scena di apertura del China World West rispecchia un po' la tecnica di Sergio Leone, l'attesa. L'attesa è spasmodica, questi aspettano questo killer che deve arrivare e poi in questi inizi scorrono i titoli di testa per coprire un po' il tempo che Sergio prende per questa attesa così di pathos. Per lui il pathos, come nei duelli, le cose, era sempre tutti questi primi piani, questi occhi, queste che.
And he did this to tell the story of those characters, which is why many of his minor characters are so memorable. Much like how a landscape can tell a considerable amount about a scene or a film's location, Leone describes and tells the story of his characters through a different type of landscape.
Sergio, one good thing he was great with faces. He didn't just say, "Here, get me 4 or 5 people to be in the background." Every one of them had to have a different look.
But he also uses the faces of the characters as a sort of geography as well, and gets really close to the faces and shows you the pock marks, and if they haven't got scars, he gives them scars, you know. So the faces sort of become the landscape, and I think that's something that he, more than any other spaghetti western director, was responsible for.
But close-ups aren't the only way Leone shoots his characters. He also uses them to fill the frame and create depth in the scene, often going to great lengths to make sure each character is in the perfect position, even if that means spending half a day on one shot.
Fare quella goccia che si poteva fare in un quarto d'ora, ma lui quella goccia doveva centrare il punto che voleva lui. E stava lì, ha girato finché la goccia. Poi ho detto, siccome dovevamo partire.
And this becomes even more important when placing multiple characters in the frame at once. Leone was an expert at blocking a scene, often filling his frames like paintings and utilizing the golden ratio in order to draw our attention to a specific detail or character, even if they're smaller than those in the foreground.
Frank sent us.
And beyond their relative positioning to each other, he also utilized blocking within the confines of the set, dividing the three men and harmonica with the railroad tracks, the very thing placing them on opposite sides of the confrontation.
Did you bring a horse for me?
And the reason these shots look so good is because in every sense, they're real. Leone used the harsh, direct brightness of the sun, something avoided by most directors, to his advantage.
He shot in broad daylight, allowing him a very deep focus. He'd have foreground objects very close to the camera and background objects. And the movement of those two objects in opposition was extremely powerful.
This allowed him the unique ability to not only keep every character in the frame, but to also keep every character in focus, preventing any of them from becoming obscured. Most of his scenes aren't about one person, and by allowing us a clear view of each one here, we can get small, subtle hints of their personalities from how they're positioned and how they react to harmonica, leaving us to anticipate the eventual draw before they're gunned down in a matter of seconds. It's a staple of Leone filmmaking, long drawn-out sequences with slow and minimal editing, followed by quick and realistic acts of violence.
Questo è l'inizio, ma queste attese Sergio le ha sempre fatte, perché riusciva a creare appunto questo il montaggio.
But unlike a typical Leone scene, there's a noticeable lack of Ennio Morricone's epic score, removing it entirely in place of something completely different.
They tried some musical themes, but they didn't seem to work. They spoiled it. And Morricone went home and phoned Leone and said, why don't we do the entire sequence based on amplified natural sounds? The opening sequence, the water wheel that needs oiling, the fly that keeps buzzing, the telegram. And then when the train comes, this deafening shriek.
This natural sound plays through the entire scene, and is a major reason the tension works so well. It's present from the very beginning and refuses to cease, only pausing briefly when Jack Elam's character pulls out the telegraph cord, and then coming back even more insistent immediately afterwards, with the addition of the fly, the cracking knuckles, and the dripping water. But these sounds also serve their own storytelling purpose. The cracking knuckles tell us this man is preparing for a shootout, and the buzzing of the fly, leading to it being trapped, tells us that this man knows how to handle a gun. He's skilled and dangerous. And even once the train has pierced the air and pulled into the station, it almost sounds like a heavy breathing animal, as though it's signaling that civilization is indeed approaching and waiting for the inevitable confrontation that's about to happen in this very moment, which we only get confirmation of when we finally get the first piece of music in the film, as a single harmonica dominates everything else. And it's the combination of all these elements, from cinematography to sound design, that ultimately turn this scene where nothing happens into something you wouldn't dare take your eyes off of.
You brought too many.
It's Sergio Leone at his best, which is why despite it being nearly 60 years old, it's not only one of the best sequences from any Western film, but one of the best in all of cinema.
Oh, well, I suppose it'll be all right.
I'm Luke.
End of the line.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.